another week of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with the movers and shakers, those film and TV and streaming makers, the producers, directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, film editors, sound editors, mixers, designers, VFX gurus, composers, stuntmen and women, and so many more. And you all know how much I love film and how much I like to talk. So it's an absolute joy to give you a front row seat to the who, what, where, when, why, and how of movie making with these interviews. I hope you all had a wonderful 3-day weekend for President's Day last week. As I had mentioned the week prior, wasn't going to do a show last week. Luckily, that's how the plan was, because I spent President's Day bailing water out again and dealing with vendors as my condo flooded for the 40th time. Yes, as my regular listeners and readers and friends know, they have heard my condo flood tales for decades, for the past 3 decades. So I'm sure all of you are nodding your heads and laughing, not again. Well, yes, again. Still not dried out as of today. There is still equipment all over my condo, and I'm sleeping on the couch. So, it's been fun. A word of advice, folks: don't live anywhere with an HOA involved. That is the start of the problem. Now, for those of you in the LA area, once we were rid of all the rains throughout the week, I hope some of you checked out Slamdance Film Festival, which was at different venues, a lot primarily at Directors Guild. Slamdance is such a good indie film festival. You get some really unique films, and voices are given to filmmakers who may not fit in with other festivals. There were some wonderful films that screened during the past week, one of which I have to give a shout out is BRB, from a filmmaker I adore, Kate Cobb. I had the pleasure and privilege of speaking with Kate and jumping on the bandwagon with her first film, Okie, a couple of years ago. And now here we are again with her sophomore outing. I will always be there for Kate with her films. I love her voice as a director, as a storyteller. I spoke with her about BRB, but I had to hold the interview and review pending the film's premiere, which was just on Friday at Slamdance. So you won't hear the interview on today's show, but it will be up on the website behindthelensonline.net later today or tomorrow. Now, for today, we're taking a look at WORLDBREAKER, an apocalyptic, action-oriented sci-fi creature feature with a dad and daughter dynamic that is told from the perspective of a young teenage girl named Willa, directed by Brad Anderson. And you may know some of Brad's work. He did The Machinist, The Call, Happy Accident, Session 9. And then a lot of TV, Man in the High Castle, Frequency, Boardwalk Empire. He also brought us Trans-Siberian back in 2008. So he's got a lot of street cred here. Now, as far as WORLDBREAKER, it's described as a pulse-pounding sci-fi action thriller about survival, sacrifice, and a young woman's fight to step out of the shadows and into the war she was born to face. We encounter this apocalyptic world at a time of war following the Stitch, a rift in the earth that released the Breakers, monsters that infect and twist their victims. There are also the hybrids, which is what the infected humans are called when attacked and injured by the Breakers. And, ladies, you're going to love it, men succumbed first to the Breakers, leaving women to lead the fight. Okay? Wonder Woman may be alive and living in this apocalyptic world. So, Willa's mother, beautifully played by Milla Jovovich, is one of the war's fiercest warriors. And we all know that Milla can do action like there is no tomorrow. And she really sets the tone in the opening act of the film, in battle. Now, Willa's father played by Luke Evans, who is merely known, they're known as Dad and Mom. They have no names. They're Dad and Mom. Dad is a battle-scarred veteran, not yet infected by the monsters. And Mom and Dad had already planned this out, that he would take Willa and hide on a remote island that obviously was a place special to Mom and Dad. And that while there, he would train her how to survive. Because who knew if the breakers would come to the island, what would happen in the future? Their fragile peace is shattered when a mysterious girl drifts ashore. And Willa, being a teenage girl and longing for connection, shelters this other girl named Rosie. Shelters her in secret in a cave until the truth about Rosie emerges and danger follows. So with the breakers closing in, Willa now has to rely on her father's training and her own courage to survive. And let me tell you, that third act is a nail biter, but you got a payoff in this film with the final image in the film that is absolutely killer. It is the money shot of the film. Now, as I mentioned, WORLDBREAKER is directed by Brad Anderson. It's written by Joshua Rollins, and it stars Luke Evans, Billy Willa, who is going to be new to probably 90% of us, and she's wonderful, and Mila Jovovich, with the bulk of the film carried by Evans and Boulet's dad and daughter Willa. Now, I just spoke with Brad on Friday about the making of WORLDBREAKER. As mentioned, WORLDBREAKER blends apocalyptic sci-fi, action, creature feature thrills, and an unexpectedly emotional father-daughter story into what Brad sees as a modern fable where heart and horror meet, which is something akin to the darker old world tales of the Brothers Grimm or Nordic or Irish storytelling myths and legends. They're always darker. They're un-Disneyfied. So this tale is un-Disneyfied. Shot on location and set against the wild, mist-shrouded landscapes of Northern Ireland, the film leans into real locations and the dramatic landscapes of the cliffs, coast, forest, and sea. Violent seas just fuel the emotion in this film. It is as if the entire setting is shrouded in darkness or blanketed, insulating Willa and her father from the rest of the world. The grays, the greens, it all plays. There is no sun. The darkness, the gray just feeds this film. And it's beautiful. Now, Brad's a big believer in visual storytelling and using wide shots and suspenseful techniques to develop that. As a result, the film has a restrained, suspense-driven visual style and a color palette of those deep greens and grays that create a world that feels both mythic and grounded at the same time. As you'll hear Brad discuss in this interview, he keeps us in Willa's point of view as both a female and a daughter who looks up to her father, and as she comes of age under the protection and training of her father. The dynamic between Willa and Dad is the heart of the film and has to be resonant and heartfelt, and thanks to Luke and Billy, it is. They anchor the film's heart. What I really took note of and observed is Luke's wonderful rapport with Billy, something I've seen from him in prior films where he's working with kids, such as the father-son dynamic in Dracula Untold. Luke is terrific working with young actors and kids. There's just something that shines through about their connective tissue. Now, drawing on the tradition of Grimm's fairy tales and the idea of less is more monster strategy of Jaws, Brad emphasizes what we don't see by using sound design and a carefully crafted score by Matthew Rogers with beautiful Celtic shadings of instrumentation, along with classical editing rhythms to balance horror with hope, emotion, and suspense. The visual tonal bandwidth and the visual grammar are beautifully designed and achieved thanks to Brad and his cinematographer, Daniel Arano. Danny's work is fantastic. You probably know him best for Bird Box Barcelona or The Ottoman Lieutenant. And if you want to go way back in his resume, he was the DP on High School Musical 3 and Cheetah Girls 2. So Daniel's got a range, and he knows how to use it. You're also about to hear Brad's excitement as he talks about the editing process, which he calls, quote-unquote, his favorite part of filmmaking, and his working with editor Brian Philip Davis to find the pacing as well as develop some wonderful montages, particularly of Willa's fight training sequences. And I have to say, the fight training sequences are so well done. They really make the most of the topography of the location, and it's shot so well by Danny. And now for Brad, you're going to hear The WorldBreaker is another exploration of the space where genuine emotion and genre tension meet. It's something he likes to call the yin and yang of heart and horror. Plus, and you'll hear his excitement about this, with WorldBreaker, he finally gets to do a creature feature. So, take a listen as director Brad Anderson talks WorldBreaker. Hi, Brad.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm very happy to be speaking with you today about WorldBreaker.
Cool, yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed this film. This film when I watched it.
Thank you.
You've got a little bit of everything happening here, where apocalyptic or not too far into the future apocalypse. You've got sci-fi vibes happening. You've got creature, you have elements of good creature features. You have that incredible father-daughter dynamic.
Yeah.
That is the heart and soul of the film. I mean, everybody loves a good dad and daughter story. And,
yeah.
And of course, you're keeping this in the POV of Willa, the daughter, right, who is also coming of age. So you got all the balls in the air here.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm a pretty good juggler. I guess I like to juggle balls. Yeah, well, that all those things that you just described are the reasons I really wanted to do this movie. It's because it appeals to different sides of my creative personality. I love the genre, the post-apocalyptic sort of survival story concept in the movie, the kind of world building that we did to a certain degree in creating this world where monsters are, taking their toll on humanity. But ultimately, as you said, the heart and soul of it, the Willa dad relationship is what was most appealing. I'm a parent myself. I could really connect with that idea that we will do anything in our powers as the parents to protect our children and to give them a chance in the world, no matter how screwed up it is. So that aspect of it was, as you said, it's the kind of heart and soul of it. And but I like these kind of movies that combine different elements, like this one does, that aren't so straightforward, that have drama, that have pathos, that have horror. I had also never done like a creature movie per se. And this one has a little bit of creature action, and being able to get into that, was a little bit of a fanboy thing. I've always loved those kind of movies, like Alien and all the kind of scary creature films of my upbringing. So trying to create a scary new sort of monster for this particular story was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's all those things that you mentioned, and also just working with a really good cast, and finding that combination of Luke Evans, who plays the dad, and Billy Boulay, who plays his daughter Willa. Like, that was much of the challenge here. You got to find people that connect, that have some kind of chemistry, and thankfully those two did, and I think that accounts for the sort of connection that you kind of get from that relationship.
Well, and something that I love seeing Luke in this role and working with Billy is when he did Dracula Untold, he had such a great chemistry with the young boy who played his son. He really interacts so well with young actors and kids. So being very familiar with some of his roles, such as in Dracula Untold, and establishing the father-child dynamic.
Right.
And it's very similar in there. He's got to go off and fight. And there's all kinds of mess happening. And he's turning into a vampire. Here, he's running the risk of turning into a breaker. So, you know, but he's so good with younger actors. And to see him here in the dad-daughter relationship is so heartfelt.
I think that's why he responded to the role. I think he likes playing these father characters. He's so good at playing multiple types of characters. We kind of know him mostly as playing either a heavy or a romantic lead. But in this, playing of dad and a sort of wounded warrior was something he really responded to. And I think you're right. I mean, I think he's very. I mean, to be honest, like having him with Billy, directing. I mean, Billy's not a kid; she's 18, but still, like you're working with younger actors, and someone of Luke's experience really helps on set, and it really helps make Billy comfortable, and that that pays off in the end for sure. Especially
with action, because Luke has done so much action. He's very adept at it. So I'm sure that came in handy, because Billy doesn't have that huge a resume, and certainly not as action and physically intensive as this role is as Willa. So watching your training sequences, the training montages, which, by the way, your editor, Brian Davis, cut them together so beautifully, Brad. They're done. They really complement Daniel Arano's cinematography, pulling back. You have it all choreographed so well. And part of what helps with the father-daughter dynamic is Daniel's cinematography, your visual grammar. So I'm curious how the two of you developed that, because I like how you give us a lot of wides, so we see the world. We see, and a lot of negative space initially in the beginning of the film. So we don't know what's out there. Then as we go through, as Willa becomes more adept at her father's hand and learning, you come in closer with the camera. The framing tightens up. Talk to me about developing this with Daniel, because it's so wonderful and really fuels so much of this story.
Well, Danny and I we worked together on a couple other movies and TV stuff, so we have a shorthand with each other. We both love good stories and really letting the camera tell the story as much as possible, or complement the story. I mean, in this one, it's like, we're creating a bit of there's two things. One is to see the scope of the world they're in, or we shot this in Northern Ireland and Belfast along the northern coast, so the views and the scenery are really dramatic and epic, and we really wanted to capture the sense of wide, open landscapes, but at the same time, they're kind of very isolating. They're sort of stuck or marooned on this little island as well. So that whole kind of idea of really playing into the geography of the world that they're in, but at the same time, like, getting into the elements of suspense. And what we don't see is often more nerve-wracking and scary than what we do see in any kind of sort of scary movie, particularly in a monster movie. I mean, it all started with Spielberg's Jaws, and the fact that the shark didn't work was probably the most lucky thing for that movie, because you weren't able to see it very often. So when you did, you were really startled, and you got left a lot to the imagination. So we kind of took a little bit from that playbook for how we depicted the monsters and the breakers. You sort of see them in the shadows. You hear them a lot. There's a lot of good sound design to me is critical of a storytelling trick as visuals. So we kind of used a lot of, as you said, like sort of ways to sort of titillate the audience, but not give them everything they want right off the bat. But yeah, part of it is designed. I mean, you do when you work out how you're going to do a movie, you do sort of plot out the visual journey that you're going to take, and as the story gets more intimate and more about her rising to become a hero herself and become kind of like her mom and take her mom's mantle in a way. Yeah, we move in closer. We get closer to her. She's less of a girl now. She's more of a woman. It is a coming of age story in a way, and to capture that sense of intimacy between her and her father, requires you to lean in, both metaphorically and literally with the camera. So that's what you do. So yeah, I love Danny's a great collaborator. We also, we make these movies, on a modest budget with not a lot of time, so we have to be very creative and shrewd about how we shoot these movies and how we, capture the essence of the story in the most economical but most efficient way. And that's part of what I like to do. We're all sort of in this business, we're all sort of problem solvers. Like, give me a budget, give me a schedule, and we'll make the movie and we'll make it work. Mm-hmm. So we did with this. Yeah, so Danny's great. He's we love, we didn't want to make a movie that was too dark either. It's more of it's not a fairy tale, it's more of a fable, I always think of this movie as more of it's more of an old-fashioned story. I mean, it's a story about storytelling and the power of storytelling to give us hope and inspire us. That's kind of what we see in our movie, like the father tells these stories about this character who's kind of like their version of Hercules or their hero, who goes out and battles the demons. And so I kind of think of the movie itself as a kind of a story you tell your kids around a fire, So we wanted to have a kind of openness like that. We didn't want to make anything too grim, and it's a little bit more hopefully hopeful by the end of it.
Oh, it absolutely is. But also, from a fable aspect and even the elements within the film, it very much falls in line with the original tales of the Brothers Grimm before they got Disneyfied. So right. It's very much along the lines of the old world, the old German, Austrian, Nordic folk tales. Right. So
that's why and shooting it in Ireland really helped imbue the story with that feeling, because Ireland is, all those places are so, the landscape and the world is so invested in mythology and myths and legends and lore and those kinds of stories. So we really did want to embrace that, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's meant to have a little bit of the archetype of those classic stories, the heroic, the birth of a hero, or a cautionary tale about, Little Red Riding Hood, be careful, when you go out into the dark forest, and the idea of transformation, like you can, if you get pricked by the rose, you can, turn into a witch or whatever. So just all that kind of cool, all those sort of ideas, they were in the script, initially, but we tried to bring that idea of fableness, if you will, to the front when we did it.
Yeah, it's one thing to be on the page, but for this concept and for these elements, you really need to execute them visually as well. And you did that, and so much with your visual tonal bandwidth. And number one, your location is just perfect for this story. It is absolutely perfect. You get the cliffs, you get the hills, you get the rough seas, because those are not the calmest seas in the world there off the coast of Northern Ireland.
Sure.
And you get the color of the dark greens of the forest, the hills, the grays of the sea and the sky. We don't have sun intruding. So everything is really cloaked. You get this sense of a shroud almost that Willa and her dad are being shrouded from the breakers. So I love how you use that color palette to your advantage, integrating it into the visual grammar.
Yeah, well, a lot of that is sort of condition and where you shoot and how you shoot. I think a lot of those choices evolve out of the physical reality of being in a location, like, for instance, in this case, Northern Ireland, because, as you said, it's always foggy and misty, and the look and feel of the movie evolves out of that, ideally. So, it makes it, all the more important that filmmakers continue to go to actual locations to tell their stories rather than creating them on stage virtually or with AI. It's like you need to be in the place, feel the wind in your face and the rain, and smell the earth to get into the spirit of it. And certainly when we did this movie, we had that. It's not an easy movie to shoot because the elements were tough. But
you need mud. You need mud.
Yeah, mud. You can't do a post-apocalyptic story without mud. I mean, mud's good.
It's great to see dirty fingernails in a film like this, I got to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the details.
That makes me happy to see that. I'm curious, because of the fight sequences in here, be it the training sequences between Willa and Dad, and then, of course, the opening fight sequences involving the breakers, the hybrids, did you storyboard any of that out or just shot list it with Danny?
Some of it's storyboarded, when it's a very complicated scene, or we shot list or kind of plan out how we're going to shoot it. So we all have a kind of game plan going into it. I like to be very prepared for when I do a scene, but also you have to keep your mind open to the reality that reality is not always so clean and meticulous. Like, you have to change things on the day. The actors have ideas. The weather comes in. Like the scene at the beginning of the movie, we shot it as one long take because we didn't have the time to do all the coverage that we might have done in any other circumstances. So it became kind of like this long one as we follow the mother character through the trenches towards the battle, and I thought it was better because it sort of makes it feel like you're with her and you're more invested in it that way. And so some of the way you shoot a scene evolves out of just circumstances, but going in with a plan is always the best thing initially, and then just you can improvise as you go through it.
Now, I have to ask you about the scenes in the cave. Those are fantastic. Did you shoot them inside a cave? You didn't go to a studio and artificially create the cave?
No, we had a cave set that we created to shoot those because, it just wouldn't have been practical. Oddly enough, there are a lot of cool seaside caves around Northern Ireland that we went to, and they shot a lot. They shot in some of those caves for, like, Game of Thrones and shows like that, but budget and the time that we had, it was a lot easier on the actors and everybody to do it on stage, so we created that. We didn't really have a lot of other sets. We really just, the only other set, I think, was the interior of the cabin itself, or the cottage. So, we did as much as we could on location. But, when it comes to just doing an intimate scene like that with her and the girl, like, you want to make, particularly when you're working with young kids, you just want to make it as a comfortable environment as possible so they're not fighting that when they try to get into it,
Hey, they didn't have wind, they didn't have rain, but they had heat. So what more could they want? That was a 5-star hotel for them.
Exactly.
Now, I've got to ask you about your editing process with Brian. Coming up with the pacing here. The pacing is very well done, and you give us the most incredible payoff and final scene in the film. But getting there, you space this out, and you use quite a few montages that work fantastically. How challenging was the editing process on here to find that pace?
Well, that's my favorite my favorite part of the whole process, because I think it's a very creative part of the process. You have all your footage, you work with what you've got, you can add all the bells and whistles, the music, the sound design, all that kind of fun stuff, and it really starts to feel like a movie. So I don't know, I mean, I think with this one, you know, we wanted it to be a little bit more classical in terms of how we cut it. It's not a lot of flashiness, and it's meant to be more classic, like you know, Grimm's fairy tale or something, you know, like kind of play it more skill. So, but you know, things like montages are often useful in terms of just collapsing time and moving us through the story. You know, the thing about this one is, like, there's a lot. It's sort of bookended with with action and suspense, but there's the middle part of our story where my dad and his daughter are kind of stuck on this island, and they're trying to basically just survive, and finding ways to keep that part of our story active and visually active, so that, you know, it doesn't feel like the movie just lurches to a stop. You want to kind of keep things moving forward, like there's still a threat out there. The danger is still looming if they're not careful. So in the editing process, a lot of it's about subtracting stuff that feels like it's slowing down the movie, and only just keeping the peak moments. I mean, you know, I don't know. I love that part of the process, is because, you know, you can cut a scene infinite number of ways. You know, you can, depending on how you want to, what your goal is, and but you do have to have a point of view. You know, you have the point of view coming in, and you know, but it gives you the chance to experiment, try out new things. So I don't know. I always find it fun, particularly when laying in music too, because the music to me is always so critical. Laying in the score and seeing how it works, how it you know, matches the emotion that you're trying to convey, or the thrill, or whatever it is. Like, that part of the process is always really satisfying for me.
So, about the score, Matthew Rogers' score, I love this score. I know his work from all the Hallmark movies that he's done for the Hannah Swenson mystery movies. This is not a Hallmark mystery movie.
No, thankfully. But, yeah, Matt, he did another score for me, and he really has he's a multi-instrumentalist. He plays everything: guitar, piano, drums. So he's like a one-man band in a way. And so we often get together, and he just plays me lots of sketches that he's written, and we just pick things we like. And he's very open to the collaboration with me. Not a musician, but I know music and know what works and what doesn't work. So that collaboration is really good with him. And we were going for something, you know, that, again, is a little more, it can be spooky and creepy and a little bit nerve-wracking, but also hits the emotional chords that are needed. And also is a little bit of a shout-out to the sort of Irishness of things. Like, there's flutes in there.
Yes.
There's like a little bit of an Irish quality to the Celtic or whatever quality to the score. But, you know, that again is like, you know, I think some movies, they live or die. You know, if you're going to use score, and if that's your intention, then you got to be really smart about how you use it. I think a lot of movies now don't pay as much attention to the score like they used to back in the old days. They just throw in like a kind of random background something or other.
Yep.
Kind of, but you know, but to me, score is there to hit moments and to build the moments, or to lull you into a false sense of security, or to pull out your heartstrings or whatever. Like, it's there to do something. It's not just there to be background music. So that's what Matt and I, when we go through it, we really do that. We go, this moment has to, we need to hit this moment with the score. We need to pull back here, and, you know, that kind of thing. You really design the score so it's like functioning for the story. It's not just there to be pretty background music.
Well, I've got one last question for you, Brad. And now that you have finally been able to do a film and make part of it a creature feature for the first time in your career, what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker in making WorldBreaker that you can now take forward into future films, which might even include more creatures.
Well, that could be one of it. I mean, that part of it, just learning about how one goes about creating that kind of thing for a story, can pay off. I'm not saying there are a couple of projects on my horizon that might require more creatures down the road. So having a little bit more, getting into that space was kind of worthwhile, and I think I took a lot of that out of it. But I don't know. I just think I realized that like the stories that I like to tell, because like WORLDBREAKER and a few of the movies I've done prior to it, I just like movies that really that walk that line between something really horrific and scary and something that's really heartfelt and emotionally wrenching. That kind of story. Those two elements, as kind of the yin and yang of this movie and of others I've done, and I find that's what I keep getting drawn to, for whatever reason, in terms of the kinds of stories I like to tell, and the kind of stories other projects on my horizon that might happen are kind of in that same ballpark. So I think I just, making WORLDBREAKER, I was like, I just really like making these kinds of movies. I just like that combination of heart and horror.
Hey, it works. Horror makes you appreciate the heart more.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, I think you're right.
And the heart oftentimes makes you want horror. So
right. Yeah, you need a little. It's like salt. It's like sugar and salt. You need a little bit of both.
That's it. That's it. Brad, again, I thoroughly enjoyed this film.
Oh, thank you.
And I definitely plan on seeing it again, especially since it's now on VOD today. Today.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I can't wait to see what you bring us next. I will be right there waiting for it.
Well, I hope to get on the horn and talk to you about the next one.
I sure hope so. Brad, thank you so much. And have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Great talking with you.
Thanks, Brad. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
And that was Brad Anderson talking WORLDBREAKER. Now, if you were lucky enough to see the film in theaters at the end of 25, yay! Now it's time to watch it again. It's a film worthy of a big screen watch, but if you missed it, you can catch it now. Everyone can see it right now as it released on digital this past Friday on the 20th. So, I highly recommend this film. It is a wonderful film. It's thoroughly enjoyable. Is this, a great tentpole to rival Marvel in the MCU or Star Wars? No. Thoroughly enjoyable, well done cinema. It's interesting, it's engaging, it will keep you invested. Great performances and some beautiful production values. So check it out. It is now on digital. Now, I'm going to run a bit short on this week's show, but don't worry. I'll make it up to you next week. But in the meantime, make sure to check out all the new interviews and reviews that are up on BehindTheLensOnline.net, and head on over to YouTube to check out some of the weekly podcasts you may have missed. There's some real good ones there. So, until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.